What did we as New York sports fans do to deserve this reality? It's a question I ask myself constantly, and a question I've been asking myself over these last 20 hours since the Giants got blown out by the Las Vegas Raiders with a brand new GM and a brand new head coach 30-6 yesterday. And just like the loss against the Jets, I needed to let it marinate. It doesn't feel any better right now than it did yesterday. There are some things that I think are positive going forward, which we'll get into later, but overall, this is terrible. And to start with the Mets and the Yankees, to go to this disaster, almost impossible. It's the craziest thing ever. And we have to continue to sit here and eat it from season to season. I'm done with it. It's disgusting. It's terrible. All right, let's get into the episode. All right, episode 5 of the BG show. My name is Bryce Gelman. After what was a complete embarrassment put out by the New York Giants in a 30-6 loss against a team that just fired its GM and its head coach. They looked utterly incompetent, and their quarterback happened to tear his ACL and will be out for this season and maybe out for the start of next season. What a sad reality that we live in today, if you're a Giants fan. Could it be any worse? Could it get any worse than this? I don't know. But from what I saw yesterday, I don't think it can. Giants now sit at 2-7. The season is over. Not effectively over. It is over. There's no recovering from this. And it just came out that it's expected that Tommy DeVito will be the quarterback for the Giants going forward. So we know the Giants' intentions at this point. We know what they are trying to do, and it's the smart move to make. Does it make it feel any better for us Giants fans? No. Even with the soft schedule coming up, it doesn't matter. That the Giants are now in a position to lose each and every single one of these games, and that's the best case scenario. Who thought that at the start of the season, the Giants wouldn't even come close to reaching their over-under, which I think was 8.5, which I thought, and a lot of my friends and a lot of the people that I speak to that are Giants fans thought the Giants would easily clear. The Giants won't even sniff 6 to 7 games. That's the reality that we're currently in. So how did we get here? How did we get here? The Giants come into the season with lofty expectations. They win a playoff game last year against the Minnesota Vikings team, which was one of the best offenses in the league, and they had an incredible season. The Giants come out and execute flawlessly, and they win the game. And for a team that wasn't expected to win over 5 games, a team with a new GM, a team with a new head coach, goes out and takes down the Minnesota Vikings. And then they get absolutely blown out by the Eagles, which everyone expected, but going into this season, the expectations were completely different from what the expectations were at the start of the 2022 season. And so as this season has progressed, there have been a lot of questions that have arisen about the front office decisions, about the head coaching decisions that are completely valid. But that's not why we're in the position that we are today. Yes, the Giants could have been 4-4 going into this game, in which they were 2-6 going into the game. They could have beat the Bills, and they could have beat the Jets, but they weren't. Stuff happens. Andrew Thomas gets hurt in week 1. He's out 7 to 8 weeks when it was originally said that he would only be out day to day. So you lose your best player on offense, arguably. Not even arguably. He's your best player on the team, him and Dexter Lawrence, 1A and 1B. So you lose one of your top 2 players. The offensive line is in complete disarray. Evan Neal should be flipping burgers, should be flipping hot dogs. He's awful. He doesn't show you anything. He doesn't take a step forward from last year. He doesn't show any promise. And the rest of the offensive line cannot do its job. Daniel Jones gets hurt in the Seahawks game where he throws the pick 6 and looks awful the entire game, gets sacked double-digit times. Tyrod Taylor comes in, almost beats the Bills, and everyone's expecting, okay, going into this Jets game, the Giants really should win this game. And what they did in that game with a practice squad quarterback, one of the worst quarterbacks that I've seen in college at Syracuse, they almost win the game. They should have won the game. Not trying to harp on this any more than I did last week. But they lost that game, go into this game 2-6. Okay, yeah, the season's probably over, but maybe we could string together a few wins with the easy schedule coming up. Nope. Daniel Jones at the end of the first quarter goes down with a torn ACL, and they put him back in the game. So Brian Daboll has an issue, clearly, of trusting his players when they say they're fine, because he trusted Graham Gano last week. We saw how that turned out with him being placed on IR because he needs knee surgery on his left knee. And yesterday with Daniel Jones when he told the coaching staff that he was fine, but in reality, he had a torn ACL. So they sent him back out there. He drops back, and he can't even support himself at his own two legs. He comes out of the game, and now he's done for the season. It's insane. It's really crazy to me that this is where we're at. That this has happened. The unforeseeable. The nightmare situation that I don't think anyone could expect going into the season, as I mentioned. 2-7. Season over. Tank mode incoming. And you know what? All is well. This is a great position for the Giants to be in. And I don't mean to rain down false hope on you. I don't mean to sit here and be like, oh, everything's great, everything's all sunshine and rainbows. But things are actually looking up. Because for the first time in a while, you actually have some clarity on what your future is at quarterback. Daniel Jones, yes, very well could be the starting quarterback at the start of next season. But with this high draft pick incoming, you will have the opportunity to take a quarterback in one of the strongest quarterback classes ever. With Caleb Williams, you probably won't get, Drake May, and Michael Penix Jr. All three of these guys could turn out to be superstars in the NFL. Of course, it's a crapshoot. Of course, anything can happen when drafting a top quarterback. There are countless examples from these past few years, even the last year or so. But this is one of the strongest quarterback classes in years. And it's something that I talked about on One Giant Step with Sean Marash that the Giants should have done. They should have tanked. With Daniel Jones as their quarterback, there wasn't going to be a tank. The Giants would have rattled off a few wins upcoming in their next 5-6 games. They're put in a position where they're, 8, 9, 10 in the draft. With this front office, that could have been a disaster. With the Giants potentially having to give up assets to move into the top 5, to move into the top 3, to take one of those top quarterbacks. That could have turned out to be awful for this organization. An organization that last year extremely overperformed expectations and now has finally hit that speed bump. Last year was a fluke. This year, as with any other sports team in the history of sports, has hit a bad speed bump, a big speed bump. That's the reality that we're currently at. If you're, and by extension, if you're out there calling for Daboll or calling for Shane to get fired, you're part of the problem. There's no way that either one of those guys deserves to be fired. With the situation that they had coming into what they inherited, with zero cap space, some terrible draft picks who couldn't help your team, an awful offensive line, and a shoddy quarterback situation where you didn't really know what was going to happen. You didn't really know anything about the future because you didn't give Daniel Jones that option. So they had no idea what to expect going into it. And they, again, greatly exceeded expectations. They won a playoff game, and then they fell flat on their face this year. Does that warrant a firing? I don't think so. What does that accomplish? Firing these guys who showed you what they can do. Next year, let's say this offseason, they draft a quarterback. Everyone thinks they have a solid draft. And then they start out 0-3, 0-4. Then you could talk to me. Then you could say, okay, Bryce, it's time for them to get canned. And I'd say, okay, that's fair. But right now, absolutely not. There may or may not be a scapegoat from this team. I don't know who that's going to be, but it sure as hell won't be the head coach, and it won't be the GM, who've actually made some solid moves. Like sans Evan Neal, which is one of the worst draft selections in Giants history, up there with Eric Flowers. They've done a pretty solid job. They do not deserve to be fired. They are not a part of this problem. The coaching hasn't been great from Brian Daboll. He's not playing to win. He has been playing to win. And something that I heard on WFAN by Tiki Barber about this situation is that there may be a reason to why Brian Daboll is coaching the way he was, and he is because of the high expectations. That he wants to play into that. He doesn't want to make rash decisions that's going to change the course of the season. He wants to just get by and not make the off-the-cuff, the ballsy decisions that he made last year that gave the Giants a playoff chance and gave the Giants a playoff win. It's a flawed decision-making process, but that's a good explanation for it. Because I really can't give you an explanation other than that. It really is beyond me. It doesn't make much sense. And it's just the way that the cookie crumbles. And now Brian Daboll could play to lose, to play not to lose as much as possible. Or I guess he could play to win, even though that's not the smartest decision. But with expectations down the tubes, maybe go ahead and show the world, show Giants fans why we loved you so much in the first place last year and why you were the coach of the year. So let's talk about what this Giants team is going forward. And I want to start with this. With Mr. ATV, Xavier McKinney, coming out and taking a shot at the coaching staff. These were his words verbatim. I think that from a leadership standpoint, I don't think they've done a great job of letting the leaders lead and listening to the leaders and the captains. Xavier McKinney, as a captain, is well within his right to say that to the media. Do I think that that's true? Absolutely not. Because Andrew Thomas, when asked the exact same question and asked about what Xavier McKinney said, directly contradicted what X said. Xavier McKinney is the Julius Randle of the Giants. And we'll get into him at a later date, hopefully soon. I've got a lot to say about that, but this is more pressing. Xavier McKinney, Mr. ATV, should get tagged this offseason, and then he should be traded as far away from New York as possible. How dare you come after the coaching staff in this situation, in this scenario, where, yes, some decisions have been questionable, but to allege that there's a locker room issue going on between the coaches and the players, I think that couldn't be further from the truth. And obviously, I'm not a beat reporter. I don't have inside sources within the locker room. I think you could just see it. Based off how much they respected Brian Daboll last year, for all of those players to go out of their way to talk about him behind his back to the media would just be one of the craziest things I've ever heard. Because I think as bad as Brian Daboll has been, he still commands respect from his players. And as I've said, he's made some questionable decisions that deserve criticism. But to say that he's going out of his way to suppress the voice and the voices of the captains and the leaders on the team is just asinine. It's a crazy statement to make. So I touched on this a little bit earlier, that this is actually a positive for the Giants. Because they would have been inconsistent down the stretch with Daniel Jones at quarterback. Again, they would have rattled together a few wins here and there, and they wouldn't have been able to draft one of these top quarterbacks. So now the situation that arises is a situation that is the best case scenario for what has happened this season. The Giants had no chance going into last week. I don't care how far out they were from the playoff spot. They had no chance. The season was effectively over. Now it's actually over. And now they could do what they need to do, or what they needed to do last year, and what they needed to do this year in the first place is to acquire assets, to acquire good young talent to set this team up for the future. This team was going nowhere with old guys like Leonard Williams, Adoree Jackson as being the leaders of this team. Leonard Williams, a guy in which, The Giants got a second-round pick and a fifth-round pick for awesome, great. He was pretty solid option on the defensive line, played 70% of snaps. But at the end of the day, he wasn't the future of this organization. He may have helped you win 10 games and to win a playoff game last year, but what realistically was he doing for your organization going forward? What is Adoree Jackson doing for your organization going forward? Besides mentoring Deonte Banks, Cordell Flott? Nothing. The Giants need to shed these older veterans and come to the conclusion, hey, this isn't the worst spot to be in. Let's not let this locker room completely implode by suppressing their voices. Let them lead. Let the captains captain the team. And let's see where we end up. Because as of right now, 2-15 with a top 3 draft pick is not the worst situation in the world. It's honestly the perfect situation. And I can't believe I'm saying that. The only reason I am saying it is because of the situation that we're in right now. 2-7. Basically a 0% chance to make the playoffs, to make any noise further than week 18. With a quarterback with a torn ACL, with injuries riddling your offense, it's not that bad. It's really not that bad. I just can't believe it happened. I can't believe that the Giants are at where they're at right now. Not that I was in denial. Not that I expected this not to happen because of how good I thought the Giants were going to be. I just didn't think another one of my sports teams would let me down yet again. It's crazy. It really is. So there are a bunch of other things that we can discuss. There are topics that we can cover. But I think today is important to not just stick with the one sport, not just stick with the one team and the Giants, because there was a lot that happened in Major League Baseball, specifically with the Mets and the Yankees by extension. The Mets go out and hire Carlos Mendoza. Carlos Mendoza, the bench coach for the past 4 years on Aaron Boone's staff for the New York Yankees. After everything that was said about Craig Counsell to the Mets, the Cubs swoop in. They take Craig Counsell. They tell David Ross to get lost. And they hire Craig Counsell for $8 million a year. That's unheard of. The report was that the next highest salary for a Major League Baseball manager was $4.5 million. So not only did the Cubs come in and they sacked their manager who they had under contract for 2025 through 2025, a manager that they said they were going to stick with, a manager that they said was their guy. They go out, tell the Mets to F off, swoop in and take Craig Counsell from one of their biggest rivals within their division, the Brewers. Good for the Cubs. And I really can't justify this move from David Stearns. I'm not going to try to, though, because I think Mets fans and baseball fans in general need to give this guy a break. They need to cut him some slack. Let him make his moves. Let him directly go against what the fans want, and let's see what happens. Because I think, quite honestly, Mets fans have been getting all of what they want. And we saw how that turned out last year with a team that didn't even finish above 500, a team with World Series aspirations that had to sell at the deadline. I think the reasonable Mets fan is sitting here and is saying, it's a little questionable, but let's see how this turns out a few months down the line. Let's reassess this decision in a year, in 2 years, and let's see where this Met organization is at. It's a crazy day. Crazy day in baseball. A bunch more coming up soon with the results of this audit for the Yankees. Not like anything is going to change realistically, but this is the time of year after the World Series when the hot stove starts to heat up. GM meetings are taking place shortly if they haven't already started taking place. And it's about damn time that we get to see whether or not the Yankees will make organizational moves that set them up for the future. Because quite frankly, these signings that they've made, both players and management, haven't done anything to stray away from the decision-making process that the Yankees had relied on for the last 15 years, 14 years, that have led them to 0 World Series appearances. All right, enough baseball. And again, I mentioned that we're going to get to the Knicks at a later point. Probably going to do something Thursday if I have some time. I may be going to the Knicks game against the Spurs Wednesday night. I'd love to talk about that. Wemby's first game in the Garden. James Harden's first game as a Clipper tonight against the Knicks in the Garden. Plenty to talk about there. But for the first time here on the BG Show, we're going to have some callers, some of my good friends, to get this segment off its feet, to get it going. And then hopefully down the line, if you'd like to get in the conversation, I'll set up a phone number and you could call in, leave a voicemail, or you could comment on any one of these YouTube posts and I will get to them at the next episode. All right. So without further ado, let's get into the new segment that is yet to be named, but we'll have some callers. All right. Let's start with Ryan in Binghamton.
Hey, what's up? It's Ryan, lifelong Giant fan. I beat Giant. I do it my way, and I'm all in with this team. I know we're struggling right now, and we should probably be winning. But like in reality, what is the future of this team? Like what's gonna happen next year or two with the draft and all, and how we're gonna actually get to the playoffs like we did last year? And just figure it out. It's tough with Daniel's injury. I want to know what our future is. What's gonna happen?
Well, thanks, Ryan, for the call. Thanks for sending the message in. The future of the Giants is to sit tight and tank, to accept this situation that has been brought upon you. Don't go out there. I mean, you can't tell the players to stop trying. They're going to try. Are they going to win? Probably not with Tommy DeVito as the quarterback. But you just got to go out there and understand that the only way to get better is to have better draft picks and to make the right decisions in the draft. You're going to have a top 5-10 pick in the first round, a top 5-10 pick in every round after that, and you're going to have a second round pick from the Seahawks. And let's hope that Seahawks team, after getting absolutely obliterated by the Ravens, continues to drop in the standings so they get a mid-second round pick. So that's 3 top 45, top 50 guys that they're going to have the opportunity to draft. That's your future right there, is young guys who could come in and who could make stuff happen, make plays, come in, block if it's an offensive lineman, catch the ball if you're a receiver, and to be able to effectively lead your team as a quarterback. Thanks, Ryan. All right, let's go to Zach in Miami.
Hey, Bryce. With the struggles the Giants have had this year, mainly offensively, I would say firing Daboll will be a bit harsh. However, what do you think the job status is of offensive coordinator Mike Kafka going forward? Thanks.
Thanks, Zach, for the message. Kafka's gone. I had mentioned earlier that there's going to be a sacrificial lamb, some scapegoat that the Giants are going to have to pin this on. And I think who better than Mike Kafka? A guy who had allegedly, his play calling duties stripped in the first couple of weeks. A guy who hasn't been getting much press, much publicity. For whatever reason, I don't know. Obviously, I mean, I say that as if there hasn't been 100 injuries on the offense, and it isn't exactly his fault. But you can't say, I don't know. I think it's going to be Kafka. I just think that you can't fire Wink. They're not firing Daboll. They're not firing Shane. But they have to make one move. And that move is to realistically fire Mike Kafka. And who's to say that he doesn't get another job, a lateral move he can make? he'll get something within the league after what happened last year and, leading the Giants offense to winning a game against the Vikings. All right. Thanks, Zach. All right, let's go to Justin. Justin.
Hey Bryce, Justin Kingsley calling from Bloomington, Indiana. What an eyesore this team is, man. I did not watch a single second of that football game on Sunday, and thank the heavens that I wasn't able to due to my studying, okay? I couldn't have been more grateful to have to study in a day, and I've never said that in my life. This offense is very, very, very concerning, especially now with another one biting the dust in Daniel Jones. How do you want to see this offense move forward, especially with the additions of a hurt Darren Waller, John Michael Schmitz, and Jalen Hyatt to this offense this season, with Andrew Thomas being gone? How do you see the offense becoming something out of nothing right now? What can we do to make this better? And how do we get back to a playoff Giants team that we saw Daniel Jones have a flawless game in Minnesota? How do we get back to the playoffs? And what do you need to see in the offseason for us to get there? Because right now, nothing's working. We have guys, Kayvon. He's been playing well. Dex has been playing well. The defense looks solid. How do we fix the offense and get back into the NFL playoffs at the end of next year? And what do you want to see in the offseason from a personnel standpoint and a draft standpoint?
First off, what an electric call. Thank you, Justin. Thank you. And good on you. Good for you choosing to study over watching that disgusting performance that we saw yesterday against the Raiders. I mentioned it before that this Giants team just has to sit back and take it. They need to make the right moves in the draft. They need to not screw up yet another draft. They might have to pick another offensive lineman. I know you mentioned JMS, who hasn't been awful. He was hurt there in those first few weeks. They have to make the right decisions. They have to go about this like they're the New York Giants. The New York Giants, one of the most storied franchises in all of sports. They need to make the right decisions. They need to use what remaining cap room they have to sign guys like Bobby Okereke, who has come in and absolutely dominated on defense. They need to continue making moves like that. That's where we're at. I wish I had a magic wand, magic 8-ball to look into the future and to tell you what exactly they're going to do. But right now, they need to make the right decisions in this upcoming draft. They need to kill it. They need to have a 2022 Jets draft. With the amount of guys, impact guys they acquired in that first round and the second round, the Giants need to do that and then some if they want any chance to be competitive in the coming years. And they have to do a solid job with the remaining cap room they have. And that's going to include not re-signing Saquon Barkley, which hurts. And there isn't a magic fix to this offense, especially when you lose one of the top running backs in the league, which they will do. It's a disappointing reality that we're living in, Justin. Really appreciate the call. And hopefully the Giants can make a magical, quick turnaround. I don't think they will, but 2 to 3 years down the road, hopefully they are in a position to compete in the playoffs. All right, that was great. We're going to continue doing that every single episode that we have. If you want to get in on it, make sure to leave a comment down on the YouTube video, or you can respond to me on Twitter at Bryce Gelman. Or once I get the voicemails up and running, then you could leave a voicemail as well. But really appreciate everyone who sent those messages in. And that'll do it for episode 5 here on the BG Show. I wish I came with more positive, upbeat news, but that's just not how it works here if you're a New York sports fan. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks, everyone, for watching. We will hopefully see you later this week to talk about Julius Randle and the Knicks. See ya.